The biggest story coming out of Iraq right now isn't about oil production, military headlines, or politics alone, but about a quiet transformation happening deep inside its financial system. Over the past several months, Iraq has seen an unusual combination of banking reforms, anti-corruption operations, currency market enforcement, and government modernization efforts. Individually, each development might seem like another routine headline, but when viewed together, they may reveal something much larger taking shape. The big question is this: are these isolated actions, or are they part of a coordinated strategy to reshape Iraq's economy for the future? Today, we're breaking down the latest developments, what they actually mean, why they matter, and why many long-term observers believe Iraq could be entering one of the most significant reform periods in more than a decade. In today's analysis, we're looking beyond speculation and focusing on the broader picture. Recent reports suggest Iraq is accelerating reforms across multiple areas at the same time, from banking modernization and anti-corruption investigations to stronger enforcement against currency manipulation. It's important to make one thing absolutely clear from the beginning. While many investors associate these reforms with the possibility of a future Iraqi dinar revaluation, no official announcement has confirmed such an event, and no one can accurately predict if or when it might occur. Instead, our focus today is on understanding the economic foundations that governments typically seek to strengthen before implementing major monetary changes. Because sometimes, the most important story isn't one dramatic announcement, it's a series of connected developments that gradually reshape an entire financial system. Let's begin with one of the most talked about developments. One of the latest reports involves Iraq's Interior Ministry conducting nationwide operations targeting individuals accused of currency speculation and exchange rate manipulation. According to reports, authorities arrested 77 individuals suspected of activities that allegedly disrupted the country's foreign exchange market. At first glance, this might appear to be a routine law enforcement action, but many analysts believe it carries broader economic significance. Why? Because currency stability is one of the fundamental ingredients of a healthy financial system. When unofficial markets begin driving exchange rates away from official policy, several problems emerge simultaneously. Businesses face uncertainty, import costs become unpredictable, inflation pressures can increase, and investor confidence often weakens. For years, Iraq has struggled with challenges including dollar smuggling, black market currency trading, exchange rate manipulation, and broader financial corruption. These issues don't simply affect traders. They influence how businesses operate, how investors evaluate risk, and how international financial institutions assess the country's economic credibility. This helps explain why authorities may be placing greater emphasis on protecting the integrity of the foreign exchange market. The objective isn't simply making arrests. The larger objective appears to be improving confidence in the financial system itself. If Iraq hopes to continue integrating with global financial markets, maintaining a stable and transparent currency environment becomes increasingly important. A successful monetary system depends on several key factors working together. First, exchange rates need to remain relatively stable. Second, the gap between official exchange rates and unofficial street market rates ideally becomes smaller over time. Third, black market activity must be reduced enough that official monetary policy remains effective. These aren't unique to Iraq. Countries around the world attempting financial modernization often prioritize these same objectives because they create a more predictable environment for businesses, investors, and consumers alike. That's why many observers view these recent enforcement actions as part of a broader institutional effort rather than isolated criminal investigations. Whether or not they ultimately lead to larger monetary changes remains uncertain. But stronger market oversight generally reflects an effort to improve financial discipline. But currency enforcement is only one piece of the puzzle. When you combine it with everything else happening inside Iraq's banking sector, a much larger picture begins to emerge. Let's look at why many analysts believe these developments may be connected. Over recent years, Iraq has been steadily pursuing banking modernization. The country has continued expanding digital banking capabilities while encouraging greater use of electronic payments and reducing dependence on cash transactions. Cashless government initiatives have also gained attention. Why does this matter? Because cash-heavy economies typically create more opportunities for tax evasion, money laundering, and untraceable financial activity. Digital financial systems, while not perfect, generally provide greater transparency. Electronic transactions leave records. They can be audited. Patterns become easier to detect. Compliance becomes easier to monitor. As governments modernize payment infrastructure, financial oversight usually becomes much stronger. This is also where anti-money laundering compliance becomes increasingly important. International financial institutions expect countries to meet recognized standards before expanding global banking relationships. Improving AML compliance isn't simply about satisfying regulators. It strengthens confidence among international banks, investors, multinational companies, and trading partners. That confidence becomes increasingly valuable as Iraq continues pursuing deeper economic integration with regional and global markets. Leadership changes within Iraq's central bank have also attracted attention. Whenever central bank leadership evolves during periods of reform, observers naturally watch for policy adjustments, institutional improvements, and changes in regulatory priorities. Again, none of these developments alone guarantee any specific monetary outcome. However, taken together, they suggest continued efforts to strengthen financial governance. Bank modernization, digital banking, cashless initiatives, AML improvements, exchange rate enforcement. These all support one common objective: building a stronger, more transparent financial system. Many observers argue that these reforms appear increasingly coordinated rather than independent. Instead of isolated policy changes, they resemble multiple components of one larger modernization strategy. Whether that interpretation ultimately proves correct remains to be seen, but there is little doubt that several important reforms are progressing simultaneously. However, financial reform is only half the story. The second major development could be even more significant because it focuses on one challenge that has affected Iraq's economy for decades: corruption. Reports indicate authorities recently expanded an anti-corruption investigation involving a detained deputy oil minister who allegedly confessed to corruption-related activities. According to reported findings, investigators arrested additional officials connected to the case. Authorities also reportedly uncovered more than 98 billion Iraqi dinars alongside approximately $11 million in seized assets. These figures naturally attracted considerable public attention. Beyond the numbers themselves, however, the investigation reflects something potentially more important: institutional accountability. Corruption has long represented one of Iraq's most persistent economic challenges. When public resources are diverted through illegal activities, governments struggle to fund infrastructure, improve services, attract investment, and maintain public trust. Foreign investors also closely examine governance standards before committing long-term capital. Strong anti-corruption enforcement can therefore improve confidence well beyond domestic politics. It signals an effort to strengthen institutions. No country eliminates corruption overnight. Even advanced economies continue confronting financial crime. But visible enforcement demonstrates willingness to address the problem rather than ignore it. Many analysts believe corruption has delayed economic reforms for years. Resources that could have supported development instead became trapped within inefficient systems. Modernization becomes much more difficult when transparency is weak. This is why digitization plays such an important role. Electronic payment systems reduce opportunities for anonymous transactions. Digital records improve auditing. Automated reporting makes suspicious financial activity easier to identify. As technology replaces manual processes, opportunities for large-scale theft often become more limited. This doesn't eliminate corruption entirely, but it raises the cost and complexity of conducting it. That alone can strengthen financial governance over time. Some commentators have compared Iraq's current anti-corruption efforts with historical examples from other countries that implemented aggressive financial reforms following major corruption scandals. While every nation's circumstances differ, the underlying principle remains similar. Restoring confidence requires stronger institutions, transparent oversight, consistent enforcement, reliable financial systems. These foundations matter regardless of whether discussions involve investment, banking, or long-term economic growth. Now here's where everything begins coming together. Because none of these reforms exist in isolation. Each one reinforces the others. And that's where the broader economic picture becomes especially interesting. When analysts step back and examine Iraq's recent developments collectively, several common themes become apparent. Financial transparency, institutional modernization, currency market discipline, banking reform, anti-corruption enforcement, digital transformation. Each initiative strengthens another. Improved banking systems help combat money laundering. Reduced corruption supports investor confidence. Stable exchange rates encourage economic predictability. Digital payments improve financial oversight. Collectively, these reforms create conditions that many governments seek before pursuing broader economic objectives. This doesn't automatically mean a currency revaluation will occur. That conclusion would go beyond available evidence. However, it does suggest Iraq is investing considerable effort into strengthening the foundations of its financial system. For long-term observers, that's an important distinction. Rather than focusing exclusively on potential future currency outcomes, many analysts are paying increasing attention to the quality of the underlying reforms themselves. Because sustainable economic progress usually begins with institutions, not headlines. Investor psychology also plays a role. Some long-term dinar holders argue that skepticism surrounding Iraq today resembles the early stages of many major economic transformations. Others remain cautious, pointing out that significant challenges still exist. Both perspectives deserve consideration. Economic reforms rarely follow perfectly straight paths. Progress often includes setbacks, delays, political negotiations, and unexpected obstacles. That's why balanced analysis remains essential. Optimism should always be grounded in observable developments rather than assumptions. Likewise, skepticism should consider measurable progress where it exists. The most productive approach is following official actions, verified policy changes, and institutional reforms instead of relying solely on speculation. Looking ahead, the coming months may continue attracting attention for several reasons. Iraq remains engaged in ongoing financial modernization, international cooperation, banking reforms, and institutional development. Observers will likely monitor several areas closely. Will authorities maintain pressure against currency manipulation? Will banking digitization continue expanding? Will anti-corruption investigations remain active? Will financial transparency continue improving? Each of these questions matters because they influence the long-term strength of Iraq's economic framework. Regarding the Iraqi dinar itself, it's important to remain realistic. Many discussions continue surrounding the possibility of a future revaluation. However, there is currently no official confirmation regarding timing, scale, or certainty of such an event. Any future monetary decisions would ultimately depend on government policy, central bank objectives, economic conditions, and broader financial considerations. For investors and observers alike, patience and careful evaluation remain essential. Facts should always take priority over rumors. Official announcements should always carry more weight than online speculation. And long-term economic reforms often unfold gradually rather than through sudden dramatic events. As we step back and evaluate everything together, one conclusion becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. Iraq appears to be moving through an unusually active period of political, financial, and institutional reform. The recent arrests targeting exchange rate manipulation, continued banking modernization, expanding digital financial infrastructure, stronger anti-money laundering efforts, leadership changes within financial institutions, and high-profile anti-corruption investigations all point toward one common objective: strengthening the country's financial foundation. Whether these reforms eventually contribute to broader monetary developments remains unknown, but they do represent measurable institutional progress that deserves careful attention. Rather than focusing only on what might happen next, it's equally important to recognize what is already happening today. Because lasting economic transformation is rarely built on one announcement. It's built through consistent reforms that gradually reshape an entire system. Thank you for watching Dinar Intel Hub. If you found today's analysis valuable, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest coverage. We'd also love to hear your perspective, so share your thoughts in the comments below. Here on Dinar Intel Hub, we bring you updates on the Iraqi dinar, geopolitical developments, economic reforms, and market analysis to help you stay informed. As always, this content is provided for educational and informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We'll see you in the next analysis.